The country is at war. Supporters and factions of York and Lancaster are fighting for the throne. You shall know this conflict as the Wars of the Roses. But for now, the Cousins' War seems most apt. Our local lord at Singleton, down near Chichester in Sussex, is William FitzAlan, the Earl of Arundel, and he has already changed his allegiance and now actively supports the Yorkist cause. But all this talk of war and powerful men seems alien and at odds to the life within our house at North Cray, where everyday life is typically hard at this time of year, even though the family, servants and tenants are not by any means poor. When I proposed a winter event to the interpretation team at the Weald Downland Museum back in the summer of 2024, little did we all imagine just how much we would learn and be able to deliver over 9 days and nights. We were not portraying lords and ladies, nor poverty-stricken peasants, but a land and property-owning class of society, with family members visiting, household servants and daily tenants and businessmen attending to the house. There were to be approximately a dozen persons living and interpreting each day and night inside North Cray. Nothing modern at all was to be brought into the house, nor would we change at 5 o'clock into modern clothes, or sleep in sleeping bags, or drink coffee, or use mobile phones. Everyone attending policed everyone else in the friendliest way to keep such a high level of authenticity and standards. Looking at all the houses and the properties rebuilt on the site of the museum, North Cray, this house that we occupied and interpreted, although there's no glass in the windows and there's no screens passage or chimney, things that would be developed and introduced into such houses maybe in the 16th century, it was absolutely perfect for the representation of the social class that we wanted to bring into our event, and not just for the public, not just for the museum, but for ourselves and for us to learn a lot about what we were doing. And the experimental archaeology stroke living history aspect of the event, our performance, our time at the museum.
But we're all affected by that. Oh, yeah. We are now tied to the House of York, whether we wish it or not. Although they do say the Kingmaker is a great lord, and that if a man appears at his gates hungry, he may take as much meat away on a dagger as he doth take.
One of the reasons I chose Candlemass, or the end of January, beginning of February for the event, was not only we want to try the winter, do some winter living history, but the reality of what happens in 1461 is on Candlemass itself there is a battle over near Hereford at a place called Mortimer's Cross, which sees the Yorkists under Edward, Earl of March, the eldest son now of the late Richard, Duke of York. He was killed at the end of 1460. He defeats an army in the West Country.
And the family of Tudor are actively marching on Ludlow as we speak. So we're here. So we'll be more war.
For some of us down in Sussex, we would only be getting news of something that had happened maybe towards the end of December, especially in a tiny village such as Singleton. So this is the time of history which we're talking about. We've got battles, we've got fabulous clothing for people to wear, fashion, shall we call it that. We're still in a Roman Catholic world, so we have not yet had a Reformation or any thoughts of Protestantism. We've had a little bit of a hiccup in the church with the Lollards and John Wycliffe back at the beginning of the 15th century, but that sort of calmed down a bit now. But we are now seeing primers and prayer books being written and printed. We don't have a printing press in England yet. The great news of the mid-15th century is that Gutenberg has now printed the Bible
over in Mainz in Germany, and so we now have printing engines or printing presses in Europe, and they are going to be the big news of the future. And so the demand in books skyrocketed through the second half of the 15th century. We can even say the Renaissance has started. It helps to kickstart the Renaissance for sure, the printing press. So we wanted to create a believable, credible working house, which meant having stores. We didn't have a barn, we didn't have an outside privy to use, we didn't have a garden outside where we could keep a pig. We weren't representing yeoman farmers. We were very much a middle class house.
Wooden beds were made and brought in with rope subframes and a straw-filled mattress on top. Some beds had fleece toppers for extra warmth and insulation. With a nighttime temperature of about 2 degrees, they were much welcomed. Indeed, some mornings we woke up to find ice on the outside of the blankets. Bolsters, coverlets, linen sheets and fur blankets made the overlayers, and most people slept in their clothes, wearing hoods and caps through the long, dark time in bed, almost 14 hours of darkness. All the household accounts I've looked at from this period show a dearth of chairs with backs. So we decided on one chair only in the house for the lady owner. Everyone else making do with benches and a backed stool with a slot-in back rest. From the outset, this wasn't going to be a normal reenactment event. Many people expressed interest, but the team eventually comprised about 20 persons. Some attending all 9 days, others only available for a few, but still averaging a dozen attendees per day. Plus Maud, the Border Terrier, star of the show, and a furry bed warmer to boot. With a variety of backgrounds and experience in living history portrayals, some over 30 years, many were meeting each other for the first time, and a pre-event get-together in Northamptonshire was both welcome and crucial in developing the cordiality and fine-tuning the winter wardrobe 1460 style. We kept daily household accounts and records, handwritten with quill and ink, inside specially recreated 15th century accounts books. Tony spent some of the time when he wasn't actually recording daily activities as the clerk of the household in one of his hobbies, which is drawing out and carving patterns onto blocks of pear wood for carving and then ultimately printing onto linen. Drawing using charcoal on the wooden blocks, and later when carving them using small handheld gravers. He was suffering, I know, with his hands getting cold. If you wanted to do anything at all, then we had to keep these as warm as possible. So wearing mittens, gloves, depending on what activity you were doing, to try and keep those fingers warm.
Would you like to come and touch your toes for a few minutes to keep people away from here?
Feet, yeah, the feet got cold. Even wearing pattens. The pattens are those wooden overshoes, often hinged. They're like clogs, and they're very fashionable in this period of history, because medieval shoes and boots only generally have a single layer of what we call sole leather on the bottom, which is not quite 1/4 of an inch thick. Paddling around on a cold floor is, you soon feel the cold coming up through your bones and through your feet. So having your own personalised floorboards, which are basically what pattens do, they're strapped on over the top of the shoes you wear, certainly helps with the insulation. We found ourselves huddling around the fire a lot during the time we were there, warming our feet, drying our feet from when boots and shoes got wet outside. So yes, you get wet feet, you get the hems of and the bottoms of gowns get very wet, especially for the ladies. So sitting around a fire and warming feet and warming clothing, it was obvious that people were coming and doing that
quite often during the time we were there. It wasn't to keep bodily warm, it was just to keep the extremities dry and occasionally to warm up the fingers and the toes. And nighttime temperatures did drop below freezing on a couple of occasions. There is no glass in any of the windows in North Cray, and only some of the windows have wooden shutters on them. Indeed, in the solar where we all slept, the east-facing window has nothing. So we very soon rigged up a thick woolen curtain, for want of a better word, in front of it on a wooden batten, just so that we could have some extra protection against the biting easterly wind and the elements.
One of our ladies, Marion, she took hot stones to bed with her from the fire, woolen apron or whatever she was wearing, and take them up and put the stones into the bed before, half an hour or so before she actually got into it.
Food and cooking took up a considerable amount of time. Utilising available medieval appropriate foodstuffs, seasonal produce, period correct preservative methodology, and late 15th century recipes. I spent time creating a cookbook in advance for use at the event. We also created a larder for the storage of food, ironwork, tools, pottery, firewood, as well as using the pantry and buttery for their correct purposes. We butchered a deer on the first Saturday. We made sausages from that venison. We roasted mutton for Candlemass feast on the 2nd of February. Pheasant, pigeons and conies were all prepared and cooked.
We baked our bread both in the communal oven in the museum site, which is known as Winkhurst, but we also have a portable bread oven, which I suppose is maximum about 2 feet across at the base, which you can carry, and we got that fired up regularly, and we were making some lovely manchets, small rolls, out of that. Once we got that going, it's everybody wanted to operate it because it was another warm place to be.
What does one drink when one can't drink coffee or tea or Coca-Cola or any of these modern drinks? Well, for the Englishmen of the late 15th century, you've got two choices. You have homebrewed ale and you have imported beer. The difference being that beer is hopped. It has the addition of hops in it, which changes the flavour and acts as a preservative. So drinking beer or ale is your staple drink of the time. You can heat it up, you can have it mulled if you wish, you can add fruit into it or spices, herbs, add honey if you wish to make possets. We experimented with a medieval ale recipe, and we freely admit it wasn't too successful. Keeping the mash tub warm for the yeast to work was impossible, although barm was also used. Think barm cake up in Lancashire. So what else did we do? We had a number of crafts being represented, portrayed, demonstrated. Alice, the second sister of the house, was finely weaving silk and the making of silk narrowwares. Clothes making, repairing clothes, repairing shoes. We spun flax and wool using a great wheel. Period correct distillation was undertaken for inclusion in simple remedies. We created buckskin leather from deer hide. Anna was responsible for creating some usable buckskin from the skin of the deer, which was removed on the Saturday before the carcass was butchered. Took the skin and defurred it, removed the outer fur using a two-handled knife with the skin laid over a log, and then took the what was left of the skin, treated it, and worked it pretty much every single day then for the rest of the duration of the experiment to produce a very flexible leather buckskin, which handles a little bit like chamois, I suppose, if you want to compare it to something you might recognise. We lit fires with flint and steel, the fire being restarted every morning using just the embers from the previous day, bellows and very dry kindling. Fetched firewood using the museum's tumbrel, that's two-wheel cart. We made wax candles. We processed tallow, animal fat, and made candles from it, and also rushlights. To get all your cards and lay down the tables in your
The horny Hepworth.
We tried one evening to survive just by firelight, and it soon became very apparent that you either have to burn some candles or an oil lamp or some tallow candles or rushlights. You do need to enhance firelight with ancillary illumination sources. Not burning candles like mad, not burning them en masse, they're expensive.
It was warm enough, I suppose, but it wasn't light enough to do anything. And because with the fire burning, it is constantly burning down, and you get flames coming, and the flames die back down again, and suddenly you're left with embers, and you've lost virtually all the light. Whereas at least the candle were burning for about 4 or 5 hours, so you get a fairly consistent light level once your eyes adjust to it.
On a couple of days when it was nice and sunny outside, we did get a couple of good days, even though it was cold. We set up our rope walk outside in the market square, with a lovely market hall behind us. One end is the horse, where I rotate 3 hooks. And the other end is a traveller which sits on 2 wheels, and as the rope is twisted, so the rope gets shorter and therefore needs to be on wheels, so it will gradually move towards the horse.
The lactic acid building up in the muscles.
Is it working? Yes. Do you need it melted or solid?
Solid, I just want to rub it in here and add some grease.
Yeah, I'll go get you some.
Bless you, thank you.
In the centre, walking up and down, in our case a 3-ply rope was being created. To keep the tension equal, a piece of equipment we call a top is utilised. It's like a table tennis bat with 3 half moons cut out of it at equidistantly around the circle, and this is used to keep the tension
It could be a mile long.
the same throughout the process of creating the rope.
See the size of the candle that's going to be dipped with this.
Ready when you are, Master John? Give us your two-face,
We played games, including cards, merrills, dice, and tables. Tables is more commonly known today as backgammon, but that is a particular move on the board, akin to checkmate being a move in chess. We read during the hours of daylight. We prayed quite a lot. It is, after all, a Catholic time here in England. It is a devout time of Catholic observance in this country. You get no choice in your faith. You're born, baptised, raised, married, and ultimately will die a Roman Catholic. During the daylight hours, I managed to recite in Latin prime, tierce, sexts, nones and vespers.
Once I finish serving, then,
Now the grace that I said before meals every day is still used at Queen's College, Cambridge, and actually dates back in various translations and forms to the 8th century. On the Wednesday, we welcomed Tom Hepworth from BBC South to North Cray. He filmed, interviewed and recorded us, and a 3 to 4 minute clip went out on BBC South today at 6 o'clock on the Friday, and was well received by not just the general public at large, but also it was a credible report on what we were trying to do in the house, rather than making us out to be a bunch of certifiable loonies. The exceptional museum staff and lots of visitors made the week fly by, many coming back repeatedly during the week to see how we fared, how we were coping with the cold, and if we were surviving. And I have to say, we didn't survive, we thrived. By the end of the 9-day duration, the museum had about 2,300 visitors through the door, which is considerably more than they would have done at this time of year if we hadn't been putting on this experiment.
So I was sent to a convent where I received some education. I learnt to read, to write and to reckon. My younger sister stayed at home and was kept by nurses until our father married again. Everything you see around you here is the result of hours of research and reading, poring over illustrations and records.
The museum have just appointed a new director, and as part of the welcoming of the new director to the museum, they arranged a VIP evening on the Wednesday. These are friends, colleagues, sponsors, former trustees. I don't know who they all were, above my pay grade, and welcome them into North Cray. And we agreed with the museum that we would mull some wine over the fire in one of our cauldrons and then serve that out of a cauldron in a period manner. The museum provided the wine and the paper cups, very anachronistic paper cups, but hey ho. And we really did transport them back 550 odd years to second half of the 15th century.
Back in time to 1461. Those of you who don't know me, my name's Aaron. I am part of the interpretation department here at the museum. This event, and thanks to this gentleman standing.
I think, judging by their questions, once they had actually got their eyes accustomed to the light, we burned a lot of candles that night.
We've never done something quite like this before, to have a full immersive experience in January for 9 nights. So it's experimental history, interpretation and archaeology for us.
But once they got accustomed to the light and the temperature in there and sitting around the fire and the understanding of what we were trying to do and what we were achieving within that house, once they understood that they could ask the questions, then some of them did not want to leave. They were being kind of frog marched out towards the end, and they were wonderful people, and we could have spent a lot longer with them than we did. So that was how the VIP evening came about on the Wednesday night.
I am Sarah Babham, and I am the mistress, as Aaron said. And
we had a hypothetical scenario within the house, within North Cray, where the house owner was a lady by the name of Sarah Babham, moving her way up through social circles via her husband into the minor echelons of the royal court, and based on a real family, the Babhams, who came from Cookham, about 10 miles away from Windsor Castle. So they did historically exist, even though our amalgamation of some of the characters, both male and female, was fictional, based on 2 or 3 of the real family who lived end of 15th, beginning of the 16th century.
But we are merely the shadows from the stones around you, and we would like you to come back with us in time and hear our stories. We are coming to the end of the great Christmas season that started with Advent, culminated in the birth of our Lord at Christmas, and ends at Candlemass with a presentation of Christ in the temple.
So her idea, and this was Sarah's idea, was that we celebrate Candlemass, and she would invite her sisters to come and stay for Christmas.
And I, in my folly, thought we meant the 12 days of Christmas, not the entirety of Advent, Epiphany, and through to Candlemas.
Christmas can be strung out to last just over 2 months if you really want to go and visit your relatives for Christmas. You can turn up at the beginning of Advent on the 1st of December, and you can still be there on the 2nd of February, and you are within your rights to claim that that's visiting for Christmas.
In fact, I hope they leave before Lent, because otherwise I will feed them solely salt cod between the start of Lent at Shrovetide and through to Easter.
Thank you very much, and that's it.
The Weald Downland Living Museum is situated in Singleton, a few miles out of Chichester in West Sussex. It has a complement of over 40 original buildings that have been preserved and reconstructed on the site, amongst thousands of everyday artefacts, objects like nails and hinges through to ploughs and tumbrels. I can recall buildings that date from the Anglo-Saxon era right through to at least the Georgian period, and there may be a Victorian building on site as well. So a variety of houses, homes and working buildings, and it really is an exceptional museum and well worth supporting. Although North Cray is but one of many houses and buildings there, we hope to return to North Cray next year to repeat the experiment, and maybe at other times of the year too.
I think everybody who was there was quite happy to have stayed. Those who did 9 days, yeah, it was a challenge, and I think we breezed it in the end. The food was excellent. The camaraderie was just off the scale. We had so much fun in there, which above and beyond what any of us could have expected. We learned a lot about ourselves and about living in a medieval winter in a house. Just how much fuel, for example, we consumed. And we also didn't eat as much food as we expected. We over-catered for ourselves, which was an interesting fact, possibly because we planned to have 3 meals a day, and because of the fact it got dark by about 5:30 in the evening, we weren't having a supper or anything like that. We were just heading straight to bed. I went into this with the personal mindset of doing a digital and a caffeine detox. So that was turning off everything digital. I didn't know what was going on in the outside world, and to be honest, I'm quite glad I didn't. Would we do it again? Absolutely. And we are in discussion with the museum about doing that. Will we do it at different times of the year? Again, that's being discussed. The potential is that we could try this. In my heart, I'd like to try it 4 times a year, so we do spring, summer, autumn and winter, just to see how the house changes, how we change and how we feel about doing something that's at least 7 days long. But I'd say that's down to the museum to agree to that.